Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday evening service. We're delighted once again to be able to have one of our missionaries with us, and I wanted to introduce you to him. It's Russ and Janet Brinkley. They are missionaries to Scotland. Brother Brinkley, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you for letting me be part of this. It's
Absolutely.
gonna be fun.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your ministry there in Scotland, if you could.
Okay. Well, we've when we moved here to Perth, we just came here cold. We didn't work with anybody, so we didn't know anybody in Perth.
Sure.
Started from scratch, but the Lord's really blessed. I mean, we knew this is where He wanted us to be, and I think He's confirmed that really for us all along the way. And we've always had people involved in our ministry. And we started the church about 4 months, I'd say, after we've been here, and then things just have grown, to the point where we are actually able to buy our own building, and so that was a big step. It has been a blessing.
Now, how challenging was that, purchasing a building in a different country, being a missionary? Did you face some? Obviously that was super exciting, I'm sure, but tell us a little bit about the details with that. Our folks maybe not have been able to experience that. So what does that look like for a missionary?
So it was extremely difficult. We had been looking at properties, and property here in the city of Perth is very expensive.
Okay.
And so everything that we looked at, we were looking at the 250,000 pound or up range to be able to buy, which is just out of our price, because we can't really afford that. And we saw a building. Actually, the lady that was here working with us, Dina Houston, she was doing her driving lessons.
Okay.
And she drove past a building, and she said, "Have you looked at this?" And I hadn't, so I called, and we went. Me and some of the men in the church went and looked at it. We're like, "This is perfect." But the other properties that we had looked at, the council, everything has to go through the council here.
Okay.
And they were like, "We want to know how many people you're going to have. We want to know how much money is going to be coming in. We want to know this,"
Wow.
all kinds of details. Now, for other businesses, I knew some other people that were looking for properties. They didn't have to provide any of that. But for us as a church, they were wanting to know all kinds of information. So it worked out, and this is God. We tell, I preach to our people all the time that He can do whatever He wants to do.
Yeah, so, for sure. Yeah.
It just so happened that the building that we looked at was a church. It's owned by a church and had been operated by a couple of different groups, but it was owned by the United Free Church of Scotland, and they decided to go ahead and sell the building. We looked at it. I contacted the real estate agent and said, "We like the property. We want to buy the building. We want to make an offer on it."
Yeah.
Strangely, he said, "Well, we're not accepting offers right now." I'm like, "Why do you have it for sale?" So what it turned out is that he knew somebody else that was looking at the building.
Okay. Yeah.
He was trying to not let us have an inroad there.
Gotcha.
So I got tired of messing with him, so I actually called the owners, the United Free Church of Scotland.
Wow. Yeah.
Just on a whim, I just called them and I said, I'm wanting to speak to somebody about a property. The guy said, "Well, you've got the right guy. I'm the one you need to talk to."
Oh, that's.
I said, "We're a church. We're a church here in Perth. We're looking to buy a building." I said, "I spoke to your real estate agent, but he said he's not taking offers right now."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't know why he would say that." So anyway, he called his guy, and so then he started dealing with us a little bit.
Yeah.
We were able to get that property in the city center for 76,000 pounds.
Oh my goodness! Which is about 3.5 times less than what the going rate was. It sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, anything that we looked at in the city center was around 400,000 pounds.
Wow. So even more than that. Yeah. That's incredible. I love that. Now, I want to be able to ask you a few questions that our folks have been kind of inquiring about with the different missionaries. So let me ask you the first one. So, this was pretty exciting getting the building, but what is one of the most exciting things that you've seen God do this year through your life or even ministry?
Well, since that was about the church was kind of ministry related,
Yeah.
I'll say this about life, and this is going to seem a little bit strange, but the way that I found out that I had cancer, I mean, it was, I look at it and see how God was working, because I would have been back on furlough.
Yeah.
Had all this stuff not taken place with Dylan and me having to come home, I would have been trying to do furlough and I would have been away, and the cancer could have spread and gotten
Yeah.
worse without me even knowing.
Now, let me take a step back. You said that you found out you had cancer. Can you explain a little bit as far as when you found out, and how you found out, and kind of help our people to be able to understand a little bit more in depth in
Sure.
in your life?
So when we found out that Dylan's kidneys had failed,
Mhm.
of course, my desire, I wanted to come back here so I could try to be a donor for
Sure.
him. So because I was trying to be a donor, it fast tracked me to get into the system here.
Okay.
And when I got back, it was just before everything was fully shut down with COVID.
Yeah.
If I had waited another couple of weeks, things would have drug out. It wouldn't have happened as fast.
Sure.
But again, with God's timing. So
Yeah.
I came in to be a donor. So they started running all the tests on me. And then they called me in and said, we need to talk with you. And so went in, found out I had prostate cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so then everything shifted. I could no longer be a donor for Dylan,
Yeah.
but it just fast tracked me through everything, all the procedures to
Yeah.
get tested and make sure that I could get the cancer taken care of. And so within just, a few months, I'd gone from not even knowing that I had cancer to then ready to have surgery and get all that taken care of. So as of right now, I've had the surgery, in recovery still a bit, but they've done a couple of blood tests, still cancer free, everything's good.
Praise the
So
Lord. Yeah.
it just amazes me how God is constantly at work in all the little details of life
Yeah.
to make sure that we're okay.
Wow.
And so to me, that's exciting.
Yeah. When was so the time that you found out till the time that you were cancer free, how long of a time span was that?
So I found out it was probably in May
Okay.
when I found out. And then I was scheduled to have the surgery in August.
Okay.
And then there was complications when I went in for the surgery. So they didn't do it then and I had to reschedule. So then I actually had the surgery in October and
Okay.
then have been going through recovery.
Okay.
Since
So
then.
basically 5 months, it just kind of that still period of kind of just waiting, was probably a bit challenging, I'm sure. But sometimes God's timing is just waiting and difficult. Let me ask you this. The second question we want to ask you is, what is one thing that you believe that God allowed into your life that has helped you specifically in the ministry that you're in there in Perth or Scotland, specifically?
Well, I'm going to say, as far as something he's allowed in my life, that's and it is an aid to the ministry as well. But again, looking hindsight, I see a Baptist influence in my life. My dad was he didn't go to church, but he was very strong Church of Christ.
Yeah.
He believed in what they taught. And, he fully believed that any other religion, that they were going to hell. It was only Church of Christ. They were the only ones.
Yeah.
So I had heard that stuff growing up my whole life. But as I look back as a child, even, one of my neighbors, a kid that I played with a lot, they were Baptist.
Yeah.
And we would talk a little bit. There was a little Baptist church just around the corner from our house, and they would have vacation Bible school. And so we would go, in the summer, do vacation Bible school.
Sure.
At that, I had another friend and I went to a Baptist youth camp with. So there were little influences all the way up to meeting my wife, who, she's the preacher's daughter.
Yeah.
And so, up to before then, I was just out living in the world, and I wasn't interested in the things of God at all. And I met her and started going to church.
Yeah.
So, but I just see that Baptist influence that's led me, it's kind of been there my whole life.
Yeah.
That whenever I really got a chance to sit under the truth and hear the word of God, and and be exposed to the gospel and the reality of all of that in my life,
Yeah.
it has made me the person that I am. I mean,
Yeah.
the ministry here would not be what it is if it
Sure.
wasn't for that influence.
That makes sense. So God has allowed, just to reiterate what you said, God has allowed people, specific people into your life that's really helped grown you to become the individual missionary that God would have you to be, as well as a husband, dad, things like that. But those influences you're specifically thankful for that God's led you to. I kind of want to focus on this last question, which we talked a little bit about difficulties and challenges initially, but what would be one of the challenges that you overcame this year? Sounded like the cancer was an incredible story God had allowed you to overcome, but is there maybe another occasion or challenge that you faced in addition to this one?
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is true for everybody. This whole COVID deal was, it's been a big challenge.
Sure.
I think you'll understand this just hearing how things, went with your church.
Yeah.
You work all this time to try to build something, and it's, it is very slow here in Europe, and here in Scotland, it's extremely slow to get people to come, and you build and you get people excited and they're focused on coming to church and faithfulness. And then, COVID comes along, and, we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And you get out of the habit of coming to church. And so we're hoping, when we open back up, that, that we'll see the group that was coming along continue in their faithfulness and be part of ministry again with us. And we've tried to keep in touch with them and contact them, let them know that we're praying for them, that we love them. We do video services, but I mean, it's hopefully they'll be back. So that was a challenge. Of course, probably more so even for me than the cancer, because I don't know, I never really was that worried with the cancer. I don't know. Janet asked me, she's like, "How can you be so calm about it?" And I'm just like, I know God's not done with me yet. So I'm not worried about it. I don't, it's just not even a fear there.
Yeah, for sure.
But the harder than that was, Dylan. I mean, you see, you have one of your kids going through something that bad, at 19 years of age. And
sure.
I mean, he's lost a lot of weight. He doesn't look like the same guy anymore.
Yeah.
So that's hard. And then, to be compatible, to be a donor with him, which I was, but then I can't be because I have cancer,
Yeah.
So, that's hard to deal with as a dad, I guess.
Yeah.
So
asking these questions, really kind of, there's one really big theme that kind of comes out, and the theme is really the idea of living by faith. How does that faith work? In fact, our theme this year at Liberty is by faith. But what can you share with us a few things maybe that faith would create in our life? I mean, as you faced cancer, as you faced the difficulty with your son, as you faced even the difficulties with this building, purchasing it, there's been some things by faith that I think that you could really speak into, and we'd love to be able to hear that if you could share a few thoughts with us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to share some verses out of Psalm 27. And these are verses that they really kind of helped me. I mean, they were something that I think helped give me the perspective that I needed to have. And so Psalm 27, verse 1, I'm going to read that, and then verse 13 and 14 at the end of the chapter there. So it says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" And then in verse 13, it says, "I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So as I was reading that verse, I was thinking about what David's faith created in his life. And, I think it's profitable for all of us if we can learn to implement from somebody like David, the attitudes that he had and the perspective that he had in his service to God. And so, the first thing that I thought about there of what David's faith created is it created pleasant and profitable thoughts that occupied his mind. And that really spoke to me in the way that I read my Bible and go about my devotion time. Sometimes we almost get to a place where it feels like a duty or something that we're performing. And I think God's mindset is that when we read the Bible, that it could make He gives a pleasant attitude, and that we're always looking for something profitable in His Word that will apply to our life, and let those just occupy and take over your mind in the way we think and the way we deal with other people and the way we interact with God. I mean, I wonder how He responds sometimes when we are kind of flippant with our service and our time with Him. So I think David's faith, it created pleasant and profitable thoughts for him to think about. Then on the flip side of that, I think it created a vacuum where despondency and despair weren't able to spread the misery that they normally do. And we go through life, and there's going to be few days in our life that there's not an opportunity to have despair over something or feel despondent over the way things are going in the world around us. And I think faith creates that vacuum where it has to have an opportunity to give Satan to give him the chance to beat us down, to give the world, co-worker or family members or whoever to really beat us down and spread the misery that we see too often really in the world that we live in today. So I think it created that vacuum for him. And I think third, that it created a courage that could stand firm in the face of danger. And David was no stranger to all of the peril that was around him. He had people constantly trying to take his life, which is more than most of us ever will deal with. We get frustrated with very simple things a lot of times, and it causes us to lose our testimony. And it gave him a courage to be able to stand firm no matter what was going on in his life. And for me, again, these verses really spoke to me because I see it for what it is. I know that God may have allowed me to get cancer, but that's not His desire for me. I think Satan wants to destroy and tear us down. For my son to have to deal with kidneys failing, and for churches to be shut down because of COVID. That's not what He wants. But we can stay courageous in those times, no matter what happens, knowing that God's in control. And the fourth thing, I think it created a patient contentment with his circumstances. And I'm not always the best having patience. I don't know about you, but I'm not always the best with patience. I tend to, when I want to do something, I want it done right then, and kind of press. And so if God tells me I have to be patient, I tend to butt heads a little bit and fight against that. And so I think a strong faith learns that God is in control. He knows what we're going through. He knows what the needs are. He's going to work it out in His time. And I just need to be able to sit back and say, whatever it is you want to do through this, God, I'm willing. I'm here for the ride. I'm willing to go along with what you want. And so I think it gave that patient contentment. I think fifth, that it created a shield of protection from the fiery darts of the enemy. And I kind of spoke about this a minute ago, but God's given us armor to put on. And I think for the most part, we as believers are guilty of getting up in the morning and maybe we put on a couple of pieces of armor, but we don't put on the whole set. And, you know, he gave us that analogy for a reason, to teach us to stand in his strength and his protection, because he realizes that Satan never takes a day off. I mean, he is constantly there, and he constantly is going to fight against us to make us lose our testimony, to make us lose our faith. And so, you know, that shield is there to help protect us from the voices in our head that would cause us to start losing hope and doubting that God's still in control. So I think the sixth thing, it created a perspective of life and death as being desirous rather than being a burden. And, you know, we cling and we want to hold on. We want to hold on to this life as long as we can and do everything to try to, you know, we try to be healthy. We try to eat right. Find out you have something wrong. You try to get it taken care of and fixed. And, you know, I think the perspective of your life should be one that I desire to live this life, but it's not just for me. And sometimes I think as a witness, as a testimony, we struggle to put that in place where in the perspective it needs to be in. God has not burdened us with going out and being a light for him, being a testimony for him. That's not a burden, that is an opportunity. And it's something we should desire when we step out of our door, that God would open meeting points where we would be able to interact with people. And I think if we had that, if we looked at it as a desire rather than, oh my goodness, I've got to do that, or it's a burden, or it's something that's a hardship, I think maybe it would change the way that we live life. So I think a strong faith in God, you know, creates that perspective for us that it's really a blessing, that more than a curse. And finally, I think that it created a recognition that doing the wrong thing for the right reason is still sin. And we know in David's life, you know, he had an opportunity at one point to kill Saul, who was chasing after him, trying to kill David. And he could have taken that opportunity, but he realized, you know, this is still God's appointed man. And he said, I'm not going to do that, because it would still be sin. And we have to be careful, I think, in our life to recognize that when we step outside of what God has given us, his word has given us the testimony to live by. Sure. It's given us the standards to live by. And when we start stepping out of that, even if it is convenient for us or feels like it might be the right decision at the time, if it's not what God wants, it's still sin. And we need to, you know, with that strong faith, it learns to trust God, that he is in charge and he is in control at all points of my life. There's he never takes a day off. There's never a single moment in my life that God doesn't have his hands at work in what's going on in my life. And so I just need to do what he wants me to do and be resigned to live as best I can. You know, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we could do that, what a different impact I think as Christians we could have in the world around us.
Wow. Well, that was definitely very powerful. I appreciate that. What faith creates, I guess the two biggest ones that I, as you shared that, for me specifically was that idea of courage, the idea of having courage, and then patience, probably difficult for many of us. But I appreciate you speaking into these in light of these principles of what faith creates. I wanted to ask you, as we kind of wrap things up here, I wanted to see what are a couple ways that I know that our people are going to be praying in just a few minutes, but what are a few ways that we could pray for you specifically, for your ministry, your family?
So pray for Dylan. as I said, we do have a donor for him. It is another fellow missionary who's a friend of ours. So pray that will happen quickly, to be able to get the kidney put in. Pray for us, new families here, that as we get back to church, that things will just pick up where we left off. I would ask you to pray for my mom. She's having some health issues, and so just pray for her. Her name is Linda Williams, and so if you'd pray for her, I'd appreciate that. And pray for our family. With me, recovery, Janet, she's had some health issues, so just pray for her as well.
We wanted to be able to let folks know that we're praying for you, or let you know that we're praying for you, that there are folks praying for you. But we're so thankful that you're part of our ministry, that we get to be a part of your lives, but also that we get to impact Europe as a result of you going. And so thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of your ministry through prayer, financial, and we're glad that what God is going to do through your life. So thank you very much.
What an encouragement it was to hear from Russ Brinkley as he just sharing with us of how we should trust the Lord. And may we be faithful at trusting the Lord in our life.